So we're going to continue on here with the series here, Thou Preparest the Table Before Me, looking at wild harvest edibles. And our particular thing that we're looking at tonight was actually able to procure some from a neighbor, which was fun. The girls and I did a little compass course over to the neighbor's house and dug them up and brought some home to have our own patch of this this item that we'll talk about tonight. So just a reminder that as we go through our presentations each week, that Thomas Edison was of the notion that the doctor of the future won't be giving medicine, but will instruct his patients in the care of the human frame and diet and the cause and prevention of disease. And it seems like medicine kind of goes in an oscillating fashion, kind of moving towards that and away from that and towards it again in various fashions. But if you are, we're talking about wild edibles here, but we can't talk about wild edibles without mentioning their therapeutic properties as well. And I just want to make sure that you check those out thoroughly for yourself as well, and work with someone who has the same philosophy of healthcare that you do as you take care of your body, because ultimately you're responsible and nobody else for the health and wellness of your body. So the thing that we're talking about tonight is the violet. So there are wild violets that grow natively all across the United States. Growing up, I was familiar with, I think we had violets growing in our backyard, but my mom always had African violets. So this is not to be confused with African violets. This is the wild violet that grows natively in northern climes. And they come in different shades and colors. So you can see that there's a violet and kind of a blue and a light blue. And the ones that I'm familiar with on the mountains behind us are yellow. They have 5 petals, and you notice that they have parallel stripes going down the petals. The parts that are edible are the flowers, the stems, and the leaves. So there's the Viola odorata, which is the sweet violet, the Viola sororia, which is a common violet, and they both are edible. All wild violets are edible. And then again, that's the roots are not, but the petals, the stems, and the leaves are. And the roots aren't of any sizable nature to speak of anyway. So just keep in mind that eating violet in large quantity may have some laxative qualities associated with it. So you wouldn't want to overeat them, but using them in conjunction with other things in a salad form, or just as a decoration or as a small component of what you are eating, shouldn't have any problem at all. The taste is kind of a mild, sweet, and salty flavor, and that's in the greens and the flowers. Again, you're not eating the seeds or the roots rather. So they have 2 main petal colors, which is the violet and various shades of yellow. So the petals again have 5 petals with parallel lines, and the leaves, as you can see particularly on the yellow one, are more heart-shaped, and the ones of the violet are more elongated in nature. And these are only, maybe 3 inches tall, so they're fairly small. And you can see the seeds right in the center there. They have an exploding pod. So when they open up, those seeds go bursting out of that particular arrangement that they have and scatter them. So thinking about it a little bit like impatient seeds, although impatiens probably explode on their own, but as a kid, I always enjoyed going up and touching them and having them just explode in my hand. I don't know that violets do that. They kind of come out with their seeds and do that at a time when you're not paying attention. So that's kind of a neat way that they distribute and reseed themselves. So some of the ways to use them are using the leaves and the flowers in particular. You can steam or boil them or eat them raw. You can saute them. You can even add the flower petals to ice cubes, which is kind of a fun way to eat them, and kind of a colorful way to have them in ice water in the summertime. then you can just eat the flower. You can harvest them and find them blooming from early spring and till late into the fall. I believe their foliage kind of dies away through the wintertime, so it's not as prevalent, but it does come up fairly early in the spring and has a good source of vitamin C. So typically speaking, in native cultures in the northern climes where they relied on more dried and preserved kinds of things, vitamin C deficiencies could crop up over the course of a seasonal winter. And the various immune deficiencies and other clinical symptoms could manifest themselves. So vitamin C is a sought after commodity when you don't have fresh leafy greens available. They love shady areas to grow, and so if you have a place that you can put them where it's nicely shaded, they will probably thrive there. So we actually went, the violets up in the upper picture, or the variety that we went and were able to collect in a neighbor's yard, that will then kind of propagate into hopefully into a nice bed of them. Because as you can, the flowers are small, and to get any quantity of flowers, you need to have quite a large bed of violets. So some ways to use them. You can make violet lemonade. So you can take the blossoms, and you can see the blossoms and the leaves, make a colorful rendition here in this dish. But 2 cups of the wild purple violets, or it could be yellow, but the purple is in this recipe. Use filtered water, 1 cup of freshly squeezed lemon juice. You can do 2/3 of a cup of raw local honey. And the benefit of raw honey is that any properties that are biotic in them won't be destroyed by pasteurization. Too much heat can destroy the consistency of honey. And being local, you're going to have pollen that's been gathered locally and is beneficial to use raw honey with pollen in it, or to take pollen that's from the locality that you're in, and it tends to make people less sensitive to pollen in the air. And then you also will be using 5 cups of additional water later on. So take your 2 cups of purple violets, put them in a glass bowl, bring 1 cup of water to a boil, and then in a small saucepan, pour that over the violets. Let that steep for 12 to 24 hours. So this is something you have to kind of plan ahead on. And then strain out the violets with a mesh sieve over a glass bowl, and then press them to release all the juice from the violets themselves. And then add the violet tea to a 2-quart pitcher and the lemon juice. At this point, the lemon juice will turn the violet tea to a pink color. So add 1 cup of water and the honey to the saucepan, heat it gently to dissolve the honey, and then add the remaining water at the very end. So that'd be 5-6 cups of water total after you've added that honey water mixture to the pitcher. So this is from a website called rusticfarmlife.com. Sounds kind of like a tasty recipe for using violets in lemonade. You can use them in ice cubes, so you can use the purple ones, the yellow ones. You could even do other flowers like dandelions in ice cubes as well. Actually, medievally, they used violets in a pudding. They would take violets, the flowers or the petals, and almond milk, and then use rice flour to thicken it. Don't have a specific recipe for that, but violets, when cooked and heated, have a mucilaginous component to them, so they do kind of thicken up on their own as well. You can also make them and add them into a salad. So they wouldn't be the entire salad, because they could have laxative effects that wouldn't be particularly beneficial in some cases. Other cases, it might be just what the doctor orders. So you can kind of choose the concentration of violets to use, but add a nice color, a nice texture, a nice flavor. Use a variety of greens of your choice. You can use some microgreens of some kind. Maybe have some arugula in there to spice it up a little bit. Take the violet blossoms and leaves and mix them in. You can add some berries. You could use blueberries, or add some other color using raspberries or strawberries. That would be a nice touch. And then you could toss in some dandelion blossoms for some accents. If you use dandelion blossoms, you probably want to take the green bracts off, which at the base of the flower, because those tend to be bitter. The petals of the dandelion itself tend to be more sweet and flavorful. You could use a lemon juice, kind of a dressing drizzled on top, and you could add some fresh ginger grated on top. in addition. Of course, you could always use a different type of dressing if you chose, but tending to stay away from free use of free oils. Lemon juice is a great dressing option. So you can even decorate a cake. So this isn't my particular cake that I made for Becky, but it would be really neat with violet blossoms on it. I don't know that those are necessarily violet blossoms because they aren't 5-petaled, but they came from a place I thought I was grabbing violet blossoms, but they would look a little bit like that. So this is practically a salad, this cake. If you look at the ingredients, it's 1.5 cups of cooked garbanzos, 1 cup of chopped steamed red beets, use some honey or agave syrup, cocoa or carob powder. You can use some to dust it at the end, a teaspoon of baking powder, make sure it doesn't have aluminum in it, a teaspoon of vanilla, sea salt, and non-dairy dark chocolate or carob. And this one, you're going to be using some coconut oil just to help aid in the it's solidifying at the end. So you'll notice there's no flour in it at all. It makes a very decadent chocolate cake. You'll preheat the oven at 360 degrees. Just spray that lightly so it doesn't stick. And you can use parchment paper in the bottom, which is what I did, to aid its freeing from the pan. If you have a larger pan, you can have a lower amount of time that you're going to be cooking it because it'll be shallower. In a food processor, you'll process until they're smooth the garbanzos, beets, honey, cocoa or carob powder, baking powder, vanilla, and sea salt. Then you'll melt the coconut oil in a double boiler and melt in the carob or chocolate and remove and add that to the things you already have in the food processor. Go ahead and whiz that up and then pour that batter in and smooth it out. You can use a spatula to do that. Bake it for 45 minutes, just uncovered, and then 35 to 40 more minutes covered. And just just a typical clean toothpick, you'll know it's done. Let it cool completely. Don't jump into it right away. Let it cool completely on a rack, or even put it in the fridge overnight. And then when you're ready to use it, just dust it with additional carob or cocoa powder and cut and serve. So violets can be used in a variety of different ways as accents, as main constituents, but you don't want to take too much of them because they can have laxative types of effects associated with them. But they are a nice addition to a culinary suite of options. So some medicinal qualities of violets. Hippocrates again said, "Let food be thy medicine, and your medicine be your food." So not advocating going and getting pharmacologically derived chemical derivatives for altering physiological systems, but actually using a slower, more profound alterative effect of actually plants that you use for food on a regular basis. Violets function as an excellent tonic. Basically, tonics strengthen all body systems as a course of their working. It aids in detoxification. It strengthens the immune system and stimulates the lymphatic system. It functions by way of having a refrigerative or cooling effect. Actually has analgesic or pain relieving qualities too. And then it's a very safe blood cleanser for old or the young. So an excellent blood cleanser to add in along with something like dandelion or red clover. So the flowers and the leaves used as a tea or a tincture can be used internally or externally for various, a whole variety of skin conditions. For respiratory conditions, so that'd be like sinus, congestion, sore throat, cold, etc. It aids in strengthening the immune system. This is the violet. And you can do that either drinking the tea or eating the herb. That's effective both ways. Basically, it's an anti-inflammatory, so it reduces inflammation of the respiratory system and the airways. So we've just kind of come through a period of time where there was a respiratory illness that was going around that this maybe could have been a beneficial component for if you had it available, because it's very beneficial for the respiratory system. So it also has, as I mentioned earlier, those mucilaginous properties, which basically means that it kind of creates a slime, mucus-like slime. Doesn't mean that it's like slimy that you're eating this slime necessarily, but it has that ability to function that way. And basically it soothes mucous membranes and also functions as an expectorant, which in a respiratory system component aids in coughing out mucus that may be sticking to the airways that may be hard to expel otherwise. It's also a very well tried and true remedy for whooping cough and other dry hacking coughs. It's been used for centuries for other bronchial conditions and dry coughs. Has a tonic effect on the lymphatic and immune system, strengthening them. And then also in the course of that aids resolving of the underlying issues that led to the lymphatic and immune suppression. So it has an alterative effect. An alterative effect just means that it alters or changes towards a state of health as opposed to towards a state of disease. So an alterative is a good thing, a tonic is a good thing. Its anti-inflammatory effects are effective for arthritic and painful joints. Essentially, it functions as a powerful antioxidant and free radical scavenger, and that in and of itself reduces inflammation. And we know that inflammation is the underlying basis of all disease processes known to man. So most of the anti-inflammatory agents that we get come from our diet, the things we eat. You can take anti-inflammatories, but those anti-inflammatories, ibuprofen, Tylenol, those kinds of things, have associated side effects that come with detoxification, as well as blood thinning and other things like that that can have detrimental effects over the long haul. So the violet flowers are very helpful in pain of all kinds, especially neck pain or back pain, can aid in reducing that pain. So using the violet flowers, so use them in a salad, use them as a tea. So preparing those flowers, you would take the leaves and flowers and pound them into a paste. Use a little bit of water. So you would collect the flowers and leaves together and then apply that paste directly to the skin or above the affected area. So if it was the back of your neck, on the back of your neck, if it was your knee joint, kind of put a paste on your knee joint and cover that poultice with a cloth. You might even want to just do a shrink wrap over it with some cellophane that could help keep it moist longer, and then wrap it to hold it in place slightly. So it can actually aid in that joint pain reduction through that topical application, as well as through the internal use of the tea. So scrapes and bruises and other surface activities that are minor, it functions as having antiseptic properties. So basically breaks down or eliminates the infection rate of bacteria. Again, it's pain relieving. So it's kind of like, you could put like a burn spray on that kind of helps relieve the pain. But remember that it has a cooling effect. So a cold tea, just because it has analgesic properties, it'll help fight the pain as well as having a cooling effect. So it prevents infections and treats infections of scrapes and burns that are minor. And it can aid the rapid healing of the area that it's applied to. So you can use a wash of the violet tea on the skin or use a poultice of the flowers. So the flowers in particular have a good analgesic property to them and a healing property. Again, mild laxative effects in quantities of violet, good for children to use them because of the mild nature. If you had a strong laxative, that would be you take it and you would be like purging. A mild laxative is a gentle movement of the bowel. So excessive use over a long haul, again, could be problematic, potentially could create a loose stool for a protracted period. So it's cholesterol lowering and blood thinning. So the mucilage in violets aids the lowering of cholesterol. It also benefits the gut flora, and the leaves are very high in vitamin A, C, and rutin. Rutin is an antioxidant and an inflammatory with blood thinning effects. So just a word of caution that I would just throw out there, that if you're on blood thinners, you may want to work with a physician to reduce your blood thinners, or just be cognizant of the fact that you're not doubling up on blood thinners. So you want to just be careful with that. It's also beneficial for individuals with hemorrhoids or varicose veins. Again, the rutin benefits that inflammation. You can use it topically as well as internally. Again, it has a laxative effects that can reduce the bowel strain from constipation, which is usually where hemorrhoids are derived from. And if you're on a whole foods plant-based diet with lots of fiber, you shouldn't have any problem with constipation. It's when you start reducing the amount of fiber and increasing the amount of animal protein in your diet that stool movement goes way down. Dr. McDougall was talking about people having bowel movements maybe once or twice a week, and that with great effort. That is not normal. A couple of times a day with a high fiber plant diet is much more regular, I would say. For two reasons that's important. One in particular is you're not maintaining that toxic load in your colon for a protracted period of time. You're moving it on out, and also eliminating just the toxins and excessive cholesterol that way. So you can also do a direct application to the hemorrhoids with a poultice or onto the varicose veins, or use it as a salve or an infused oil, infused violet oil. So we can talk about the infused violet oil. It's helpful here also in skin conditions, various dermatitis, insect bites, rashes, eczema, etc. Again, it's anti-inflammatory and having a cooling and soothing effect as a part of its properties. Wild violet tea, you can use it again as a wash or salve. So here's the basic process for making an infused oil. You want to use, in this case, we're using violet flowers, but you can do it with any herb or spice. But you want to make sure that it's good and dry when you use it. So make sure they're dry. Take a small glass jar. You don't want to do it in large quantities. You want to do it in amounts that you can use judiciously because it doesn't store for a long period of time. You want to use an extra virgin olive oil, or you can use walnut, grapeseed, peanut, or sunflower, but a nice light oil. And then bruise or rub the herbs. Basically, that allows the contents to be extracted as you infuse them. Or you can lightly roast if it's a spice you're using. So pack it into the container. You don't want to pack it too tight, but into the container. You can see the pictures down here are kind of a loose infusion. Cover that with oil. Cap the jar and set it in a sunny window, and then just turn that over, shake it periodically through the course of a week, and then you can start using it. Use the excess or extra in, just store it in the refrigerator. That maintains or aids its the retention of its properties and doesn't go rancid as quick in the fridge. So that's doing an infusion. So a violet infusion, you just take violet leaves and put them into your oil of choice and rotate that, shake it daily for a week, and then you can start using that infusion for skin conditions, on joints, and that type of thing. So wild violet tea. So this is a recipe for making the violet tea. So if you make the tea out of all the flowers, just flowers, it'll be a milder tasting tea. But typically it can be challenging to get enough flowers on their own because they're small flowers. It would take quite a bed of violets to get any quantity of flowers. So also a 1 part flower to 2 part leaves works well on its own. So take 2 teaspoons of dried violet flowers or leaves and 1 teaspoon of dried flowers. So if you're doing an all flower, then you're going to do 3 teaspoons of flowers. If you're doing a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 leaves, 1 flower. And then 1 cup of boiling water and some raw honey. That's just optional, an optional addition. If you're going to use it for a skin wash, don't include the honey. And then pour boiling water over the herb. Let it steep for 5 minutes and strain it and drink it. So if you have a small strainer, you can just pour that right through that and collect the tea that's left behind. So just keep in mind that some people can be sensitive on contact with violet leaves. It's fairly rare, but just be aware of that as a possibility. It has no known internal toxicities, but as anything you're trying new, you want to try it in a small area of your skin or a little bit at a time. In case there is a sensitivity, you're not going to have a huge reaction to it. The roots and seeds can cause a stomach upset if used in quantity. Typically, the roots and seeds are not used, just the leaves, flowers, and stems. And in the roots and seeds themselves can cause vomiting, high blood pressure, or breathing problems. Again, that's limited to the roots and seeds. And it's also best to collect from known sources. So if you know you have a violet patch and you're okay, if it's winter time or time when they're not flowering and you think they're violets, you just want to be very sure they are. So it's best to collect them when you have flowers present, so you know for sure. So it can provide very prompt relief from ulcers. It's a blood purifier again, and it can be used in cancer treatment externally as a poultice and internally as a tea or eaten. Cancerous growths or other skin conditions, violet and red clover and vervain used together can be very beneficial for that. So combine those and use as a tea. And the picture over here is of vervain. It's a plant. It's also known as verbena. So it's very excellent again for headaches and congestion, and excellent for nervousness and general debility when combined with black cohosh, nerve root, and skullcap. So there's some interesting research articles out there with respect to violet. So the inhibitory effect of Viola odorata extract on tumor growth and metastasis in breast cancer in the Iran Journal of Pharmacology. Viola odorata has cytotoxic effects on the 4T1 cells and affects antioxidant activity and metastasis in breast cancer. So in conclusion, they note that the violet can inhibit tumor growth and reduce the metastatic rate in lung, liver, and apoptosis in breast cancer. So that's a potential therapeutic role for violet in those situations. This is 2018. Again, looking at the evaluation of two different violet species in looking at tongue cancer in rats. They said that it was a dose-dependent inhibitory effect on the development of tongue cancer that was found in rats. So it could be beneficial for someone with oral cancer. Viola tricolor induces apoptosis in cancer cells. It exhibits anti-angiogenic activity on chicken membrane. So this is an animal study. Anti-angiogenic would be the prevention of blood vessel formation in a tumor that was growing, because they have to have a blood supply. If it cuts off the blood supply, then they can't continue to grow. So the results of the present study suggest that the violet has potential anti-cancer properties by inducing apoptosis, which is the death of the cells, and inhibiting the blood cell formation or blood vessel formation, angiogenesis. So taken together, it has potential cytotoxic properties for decreasing proliferation of tumor cells and inducing apoptosis, inhibiting angiogenesis on cell adhesion molecules, or CAM. And then finally, the suppressive role of violets on malignant cancer of mammosphere-derived breast cancer stem cells. So Clinical Translational Oncology 2020, so a very recent article. Their conclusion was that Viola odorata extract exerted anti-cancerous activities on both breast cancer cell lines and their derived BCSCs. Anti-cancerous activity of this extract was significantly more in a couple different cell lines here in comparison with dedicated cell lines. So data suggests that the violet extract mostly targets cancerous cells, not normal cells, with the exception of high concentration. So you want to do it in therapeutic levels. If you have too much, that may have other cytotoxic effects beyond the cancer cells. So it acts in a cell-dependent manner. So just a reminder that from Ezekiel 47:12, that the leaves and their leaves are for medicine. And that's some of the therapeutic and edibility properties of violet. Again, let your food be your medicine and your medicine be your food.